Yeah. No, we had a great time. We did all the touristy stuff because we had my 13-year-old with us. So, we did
Yeah.
Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, Rockefeller Center, go take some pictures, learn some interesting lessons. Lesson learned was this: everybody else in the world wants to ice skate too the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Yes.
So even though we bought tickets and had a time slot, the
Yeah.
line to get out there would have been hours, and I had an assigned time, and they were like, "Get in
They
line."
don't care.
No, they're like,
Yeah.
so we left. Like I made my tickets were a donation to the city.
Right. Yo,
hey, I'm not waiting in line 2 hours.
They said, "Yo, Hayseed, welcome to New York."
Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to 2024. This episode probably won't come on until May, so we might be closer to Cinco de Mayo than we are to New Year's, but this is our first, this is our first recorded episode of 2024. So it's calendar year 3 for us. So Meghann, you should feel quite honored.
I do. This is special. Best thing that's happened to me all year.
Well played.
So nice.
Played. Nice.
Well played. Played and slayed. Okay. Banter time.
Yes.
No sling. I'm fully transitioning out from the rotator cuff surgery. However, you can't see this because pain. So I overdid it. I'm quite the exercise buff, Will, and I overdid it with the sling and stuff, and I blew out my meniscus. For the record, here comes Clark Reinhardt, a very OG guest walking around. Can't stop and say hi. And so that's my thing. But Will,
yes,
we continue with the pod because of why?
Because you're a soldier.
Close. Show business, baby.
Oh,
show business. Baby.
Yeah, I mean, you recorded shows with slings and tight with your offhand, and to just have a cane and a bum leg, like that's nothing for you.
Nothing for me. Nothing for me. So I'm glad to be here. Wait, we got ahead of ourselves. See, I'm doing it lefty. Not my best. I'm John Lane.
I am Will Barfield.
And we are a work in progress. Mm-hmm. We're also a one-take production. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Let's introduce our guest. As always, she is a very special guest. We know that's true because the slide says it. Slides don't lie. We covered that with Evan. Slides don't lie. Meghann, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meghann Misiak, and I actually really consider myself a consistent work in progress. I'm one of those salespeople that really never stopped progressing, never stopped challenging what people said was possible. I jumped into sales training when I was pretty early in my career. I've done sales training, sales leadership. I actually went into consulting a few years ago, and I really thought, I was like, I'm never going to get bored of this. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Spoiler alert, I got bored. And so I actually just started my new role, which is leading a sales team for the first time. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of lessons and a lot of really interesting insights I've gleaned from the last few months. So recording this podcast was really special because I think when I answered some of the questions, I saw it from the perspective of how it impacted my career so far. And I realized each time you start a new role, the application of some of these things really changes. So I'm excited to talk through it. I think it's perfect timing.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm. Well, we love hearing that. And we may have some follow-up commercial messages for you when this is all over. Welcome. I do have to point out one thing, however, using my magic thing. I may have gotten an old one, but Brooklyn is not where you're at. Tell folks where you live. Not your address. Don't give your
No.
You can send all gifts to. No, I'm kidding. I live out of 2 suitcases, actually. So I was in Brooklyn for the last 6.5 years, but I did the truly like millennial COVID trend, and I think I donated 2/3 of my belongings. I packed up my suitcases and I traveled all over the world, and then I got tired of that. So I'm settling down a little bit more into Mexico City. And yeah, it's funny. I came back for a few months because in terms of challenging myself, I love it. But it is wearying. Not only starting a new job and doing just building a business, things like that, but also learning a new language.
Yeah.
And having to go to the grocery store and translate every single spice. Yeah, I think I honestly am addicted to challenging myself and to working on myself. And it gets a little out of hand sometimes.
Well,
I can barely speak English.
Me too.
It's impressive.
No, it's pretty good as far as you're concerned. But Meghann, that's so awesome, and I'm glad you took advantage of the chance to live a type of life that most people wouldn't even take the chance if they could. So, welcome to the pod. It's been a long time getting you here. I think we had some fits and starts, but we're so glad you made it. So let's get going. Will, where do we like to start our pod? What subject?
So this pod is all about leadership traits under stress, and we are going to talk about how we use OAD, the tool,
That's right,
to do what we do to unlock and define superpowers and such and such.
Absolutely. And we like OAD because it's super easy to administer. It's accurate. You'll vouch for that, I think. It takes away social desirability distortions because it's such a simple assessment, and it's built to the standards of all of these crazy institutions that none of us heard about before. But it tells us we can trust the data, so we feel good about it. We even made a podcast about it. So here's where we kick off. We like to talk about the leadership style matrix because that's a nice, simple way to show folks all about this very powerful and sophisticated instrument called OAD. There's 4 quadrants. Will, how many typical traits?
13.
Nice. And they all fall into this 2x2 grid. We read it like this. I am a socially oriented generalist in the builder quadrant, and I happen to be one of 4 negotiator. Will is a
technically oriented generalist, architect quadrant, developer.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, Meghann is a socially oriented generalist in the builder quadrant, and she's what we call a variation of negotiator. We will get to that in a minute, but I do have to say that I think out of 56 episodes, about 25 have been negotiators. So either we attract them or
I actually heard that it's the best profile. So
you can say that, we can't.
Only the best.
I'm linking you Morse code. Yes, we agree with that. Followed by developer, close second. Close second.
Maybe.
My wife is a facilitator. She's a coordinator, and I would say that is the best because she watches.
We all have our biases. At least we're conscious of them.
That's right. Okay, so the way we build our leadership traits under stress is OAD. We covered that, and everyone has their own individualized OAD readout. Will, what's your question?
Meghann, how does it feel to have yourself reduced down to a 2-dimensional data table?
Well, it's really funny that you say that because so one thing I don't think y'all know about me is that I actually I'm very, very big into spirituality. And for example, I read tarot, which focuses super deeply on archetypes. I literally have an astrology tattoo, and understanding astrology and understanding how I know my human design. I know all of these different ways of assessing yourself. And so for me, when it comes down to really looking at profiles, what I found is that it's really interesting when sometimes what I found, I'm excited we're going to talk more about the results and the deeper is like sometimes the overall profile doesn't doesn't really give enough context. But the variation and like the intricacies it really does teach yourself a lot about yourself. And it can change and grow based on your experiences and the context you're in.
So you
But
like
I'm gonna say, the builder, even now, starting this new job, even that title resonates so deeply with me.
Oh, good. I'm good.
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's break it down. So in our simple terms that we use for the pod, we focus in on the relative traits, assertiveness, extroversion, patience, detail orientation. And we look at these together in order to get into the quadrant. So look at your relationship between your A and your D, your assertiveness and your detail orientation. Your A
Mhm.
is to the right, it's greater than your D. In simple terms, you're a generalist. We look at your E and your D, and that is extroversion versus detail orientation. If E is to the right, you're a socially oriented person, so thus socially oriented generalist in the builder quadrant. Here's our variation. Our variation is your P for patience, and in our world, P is looking at two data points, I guess. One is comfortable with change, and the other is urgency versus precision. When the P is to the right of the A, it's somebody who is patient and is focused on precision, how things get done. That is not a typical negotiator. I am a negotiator, and my P is down here. So I'm somewhat impatient and looking for change, et cetera, et cetera. So I
Yeah.
would think that this high P was very helpful for you, especially in sales training, where you
Yeah.
know so much more than each student and you have to sort of move them along a path.
And honestly, it's one of those things where it's is it the chicken or the egg? I'm gonna be honest, if you had assessed me probably, I don't know, at the beginning of my training career, I
Right.
would have been the P would have been off the charts in terms of it was non-existent. Uh, and what I think even, you talk about your wife being a facilitator. Me working in training has actually taught me so much patience. And I'll give just like a couple of examples because also this is kind of the interesting part about when you think about your natural profile
Mm.
and then you think about being in roles that challenge you. A lot of people tell me, for example, a lot of people tell me right now, oh, this is just the way that I work. I have ADHD and I just like am not very detail oriented.
Mm.
I've really tried to work through the things that I struggle with. This is really my work in progress. Is not just saying this is a weakness of mine and I just don't know how to do it. But that high P shows, I've spent years trying to have compassion for people's feedback. I realize that I need to move a little bit more slowly. I need, especially as a leader, as someone who is presenting these strategies, I used to blame people. I was like, "Oh, you're just not like doing it well enough."
Mm.
Or I would just like, try to get things done really quickly because I'm very impatient and I'm very action oriented. And it wasn't until really taking feedback compassionately and understanding that I was moving a little bit too quickly and just wasn't helpful. I've been able to grow that. So for me, working in a role that really focused on a different profile, that facilitation, it's so cool to see that because it shows that it's been working and I've been building that skill. So I
Love,
appreciate that.
love it. Wilbo.
Yes, sir. So we are at the point where we're going to start doing some analysis here,
Cool.
Megan. Anyone who shows up in the builder quadrant with the negotiator readout is going to see these superpowers. Now, John pointed out that you are a variation. So John's going to see exactly the same 5 superpowers as you. However, he may feel differently to a certain degree about those than you would because of the variation. Point is, just is there one here from this grouping that really stands out to you, either that you feel about yourself is accurate or that you've heard from others is really spot on? Which one of those jumps off the page?
Yeah, I think it's 2 for me. I would say driving and optimistic probably summarize my entire personality.
Love that.
I'll
That
let
was
you have 2
quick.
then.
I'll take it.
Kryptonite, right? So pressure's on. We're in the spice aisle trying to figure out what in the world that word is. When things get hard, our superpowers become our kryptonite, our strengths become our weaknesses. Which of these four do you feel like is most accurate?
Literally all of them, in equal measure. I will say, I think the one that I mean, it's really hard to choose all of them, but, I think the attention to detail is just something that I hate. It comes from that, like, impatience. That's the one I'm still working on. I hate detail.
Well, let me point out also that somebody with a low D like ours
Mhm.
is somebody. The flip side of it is we are comfortable delegating.
Yeah, I do not care. You can do
Right.
it the way you want.
Yeah.
I just need it done
Yeah,
ASAP.
that's right.
So,
And
take
the
turns
flip
getting
the
it
flip
rolling.
side, our flip side is some people with a higher D will hold
Mhm.
on so long that the project is almost failing when they pass it off in desperation. Now
Yeah,
we can send things away too early, right? But
yeah.
that's probably better than too late. So in our world, what did Sarah call it, Will? Sarah Glover?
Shadow side.
Shadow side, right. Every trait
Oh,
has a shadow side to it, right? And so it just depends on how you look at it. So we never think low D is bad or high A is good.
yeah.
It's just they are what they are, and they teach us things about them. But then how we use them is what's really most important. Okay,
Yeah.
let's get into what you told us in the show prep. Will?
Yeah. So you took the assessment, you saw your results, you worked with John on some show prep, you took some notes here. What stood out to you in the analysis that led you to make these three comments? Walk me through these bullets here, please, about why you teased these out as your superpowers.
Yeah, so for me, it's been really interesting because ironically, because of some of the kryptonite elements, I
Mm,
actually am very critical of myself. And it's essentially one of those conversations around there's kind of a performance management argument that happens where one school of thought is that we should just be hyper focused on leaning into our strengths and just ignore our weaknesses.
yeah.
And the other is that we should really overcome our weaknesses. And I think naturally, I am very hard on myself because of that people pleasing, so I just try to attack the weaknesses. But the last few years, I've learned that the things that I'm really good at, to your point, like they're even with detail orientation, I can get things done. Like, that negotiator, I'm so focused on getting something done that I negotiate. I delegate, I negotiate, can see that clear picture of, what we need to get done. I can see all perspectives, I'm compassionate, but that action orientation is so incredibly valuable within organizations,
So
and that optimism keeps me going. So it was really cool to just have that reflection of the things that I'm really good at. And the coolest part now, like I said, I think I took this several months ago, is starting a new job
Yeah.
and seeing those things in this role, seeing my strengths really mapping to what the organization needs, leading a sales team, especially behavioral change, really wanting that optimism, but also, let's be real, head of sales, we got to get stuff done. We got to bring in revenue.
Yeah.
chopping
Before
wood,
you go to the
piling up.
next slide, John, one of the things that we talked about for the benefit of the audience in the pre-show was that Meghann was in consulting, you know,
Yeah.
uh, running her own show, thought she'd never get bored with that. Surprise, got bored with that, and is now back internal as a sales leader at an organization. What was it about the consulting work, which that's what John and I do too, that
Yeah.
led to the boredom, or led to you saying, okay, I've reached the end of the runway on this, I've got to do something else?
Yeah, so it's funny because, I actually thought I think I was just it was boredom, and as you were going through the 4 traits, I was like, "Wow, I am a builder at heart." When it comes I think when it came to the work, it was starting to get more into the facilitator a few years in. I
Mm,
was doing the same thing over and over. It was not as strategic, it was a little bit more repetitive, and I realized I love building things.
are you a
And
0 to 1 person?
sorry?
A 0 to 1 person, like taking something
I
that wasn't there and getting it, or do you come in later?
I'm not completely a 0 to 1 person. It's a little bit too chaotic for me. Like, props to people who can work with like founders, directly, like for salesperson. I'm more of like a 5 to 7 person, but yeah, that's the thing too, is really just recognizing what your strong suit is. And that's a great question too, because for me, it's also realizing how much of a specialist versus generalist I want to be. I don't like to be a 100% generalist while I'm working, 15 different roles. But I really know what I like, and I've been able to found like the perfect position. But by embracing that aspect, I also know that, to be real, in a few years, I'll probably want to do it again, and that's okay. They know. But it's fun. Yeah.
So self-analysis, here's the kryptonite information that you pulled out. Talk us through this and what you mean here and what it means to you.
Yeah, so it is really interesting because I can think about very early in my career, people pleasing and a lack of detail orientation, I really struggled with. And it actually was this kind of self-fulfilling cycle where I would struggle with detail orientation, and then I would not do it very well, and then I would be embarrassed, and so I'd like try harder. And for me, I also, when it comes to detail orientation, some of the shadow sides as well of the driving element is it for me, it really led to workaholism because I was so driving. I just focused so much and I didn't think as much about the detail. I just like did it. And so for me, that led to a really toxic amount of burnout where I quit my job. That's actually what led to consulting. And to be fair, it led to an incredible career, and I'm really happy that it happened. But also now I think about detail in a different way, where I know I need to detail, and I know I need to be more strategic about thinking about how I'm going to do things and also why it would not work so that I can not waste my time. It's almost recognizing that sometimes even the drive can be too fast. So even what I put here, even admitting to myself, for example, I'm working on a massive 2024 project, right? Like how these are my OKRs and this is how I'm going to achieve them. And I, as a leader, straight up said, hey, one thing I'm not very good at is developing project plans for cross-functional teams. This is probably going to be a pretty complex project plan. Who's really good at that? And someone raised their hand. They're like, I love that. Like, please put me on that project. And I'm like, thank goodness. So a lot of that has also been but also people pleasing. So a lot of it has been working through the people pleasing to admit I'm not great at detail orientation. I need help, making sure that I have people on the team that I can tap on. And also one thing recently, I know this is so specific, but I've been thinking a lot about time management. And some of my clients on the sales coaching side, they literally have like item by item bulletized, like this is my to-do list. And it's like in this fancy system. I tried that and I was like, this is miserable. I hate every single aspect of it. It's way too detail oriented. So it's also just letting go and realizing that like my working style might be different than other people's.
Right. Yeah.
Really figuring out not only like how can I be a good leader with these things in mind, but also how can I literally act in every moment and build kind of like this working style around the things that I'm really good at and the things that allow me to be my best self.
Perfect timing for the slide shift.
Oh.
Thank you, John. Meghann,
I'm just jumping around here.
You mentioned in the pre-show also that it took a while for us to get to recording today. You and John connected a while back, and you took this assessment a while back, but you said the timing was really great because you just started this new adventure. So how do you take the experience of the OAD assessment and this pod with me and John, that analysis and reflection of strengths and weaknesses, and apply that to what you're going through right now because it seems like, there's a lot happening professionally and personally that's, transition and movement. So maybe this experience will really help you there.
Honestly, yes. A few things I'm thinking about right now. I know that it's we're probably going to have this recording in May, but right now in January, I'm really focused on building out the plan for the year. And I think that one thing that I'm taking from this is that our profile is really good at, just that aspirational, not super detail oriented plan, like more of that like visionary and I will work to get it done. But what I'm finding is that sometimes it gets a little bit overwhelming because I don't have the detail. And so one thing that I've been doing the last few weeks is just putting time on my calendar to make sure I like further vet the plan. I like work through some obstacles. So it really is finding that right balance between my natural style and also making sure that I'm managing the kryptonite and that I have time to make sure that I'm covering it and I'm not just letting it slip. So yeah, I'm definitely making sure that I am tapping the right people to help me manage my kryptonite, but also putting the processes and the habits in place to make sure that things don't slip.
Lovely.
Yeah.
What a show, Meghann. Thank you. So good to see
Thank
you in
y'all.
person.
Yes, very
I
nice
love
to meet you.
following you on LinkedIn, seeing where the hell you're showing up. We love that you're a legacy from Leslie and other ways, and that you're a work in progress. So say it along with us. I'm John Lane.
I'm Will Barfield.
And we are a work in progress. Thank you. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions. Available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.